Hello, welcome to the new episode of Talk Turkey from Istanbul.
Hello, Nevşin. Hello from Brussels. Today we are again talking about the opposition, this time about the opposition's candidate. Hopefully we will also talk about other issues in the coming weeks, but as it's at the top of the agenda in Turkey somehow, I guess it also makes sense to talk about it.
It does.
Why is this issue suddenly at the top of the agenda? I mean, the elections are next year. We still have 14 months. So what's going on?
At least. Well, one thing, first of all, Turkish opposition has watched the Hungarian elections very closely. I mean, we're joking. Even Hungarians did not talk about their elections as much as we did in Turkey. So, everybody analyzed Hungarian elections, why it was lost, who is the candidate, why he lost, and this and that, really. I think that's one issue. But other issue is one of the...
Some people were even more disappointed than the Hungarian opposition, I think, somehow.
Totally, exactly. Very interestingly. Because I think people saw some similarities. There was a united front against Orban. All these fragmented opposition consisted of very different parties and this and that. Probably that was why. But one other thing. So one of the Turkish opposition leaders, I mean, he's not in the opposition. We have these 6 main opposition parties. They came together and they're working on a common strategy to basically win the elections and also reform Turkish democracy after the elections if they win. So these are 6 main opposition parties, and also, of course, there are other really small opposition parties also being formed, getting into politics and this and that. So one of these figures, Ümit Özdağ, he comes from a very nationalist background, and he used to be with the MHP. Then for a while he was with E Party. Now he has his own party, and he came up on a TV show and he said, our candidate is Mansur Yavaş. Mansur Yavaş is Ankara's mayor. He was also, the candidate back then of the opposition, both at CHP and E Party, basically, and he was elected. He's a popular figure, but he's not really political. He doesn't really comment on politics or anything, but he's loved by Ankara people, basically. So he came up and all of a sudden he said, our candidate is Mansur Yavaş. Mansur Yavaş was shocked. He said, well, I mean, nobody asked me. I don't want this position. I want to stay as a mayor and this and that. But, the discussion started.
Well, I sort of called this parties like... his party and some other small parties as useful opposition parties for the government, because maybe they don't really coordinate efforts with the government, or maybe some of them do, but we just don't know. What they do is indirectly helping government to muddy the waters in Turkey, and that's what government wants in any case. So, and this entire discussion about the opposition's candidates, I'm not sure whether it's really at the top of the agenda of the general public. People still have concerns about inflation, energy prices, but it is suddenly a number one issue among politicians in Turkey. We need to see that. And it started actually from the government side. First of all, they've been discussing this issue for a very long time. Also, like pro-government media, it's like one of their top issues. Like they come together every evening, pro-government TVs, and they discuss who should be the opposition's candidate. It's even a desperate effort, I think. Of course, there are reasons behind it, because while there's no snap elections, at least government claims so, then we still have time until 18 June 2023. But they want to see a candidate because there's a strategy behind it. The entire propaganda machine of the government will start to work against the candidate. They will be targeting, discrediting him or her day and night with political speeches, media, troll attacks, etc. So I think it makes sense for the government, but I'm not sure if for the opposition, it still makes sense to clarify this candidate that early. But there's, I think, more and more pressures coming on them, and maybe we can also see in the coming months a potential candidate coming out. And we talk about the opposition's candidate, but we also don't know if there will be only one candidate from the opposition. I mean, as far as I understand, the 6 parties, even if they may have different plans for the elections, for parliamentary elections, they still agree on one candidate, or they want to agree on one candidate, but we still don't know if, like, Pro-Kurdish HDP or some of those small parties, whether they will have candidates too, because this may really change the dynamics by increasing the chance of Erdogan. Because if we see the polls, the opposition candidate, if there's only one, he or may even have a chance to be elected in the first round. But if there are other candidates, then it means 2 rounds. And considering Erdogan's political experience, I think running against him twice would not be an ideal scenario for an opposition candidate. So, but as this issue is discussed, I think it makes sense to maybe to go through candidates very briefly, to present them and to discuss also their pros and cons, and why people want them or why some people don't want them. I mean, we talk about 2 mayors, Mayor of Ankara, you already mentioned, Mansur Yavaş, Mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu, and then the leader of the main opposition party, CHP, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. And then there are also other discussions about, I mean, whether it could be a technocrat, a businessman, a scientist. But if we start with Mansur Yavaş, Mayor of Ankara, he's popular because he won elections in Ankara in 2019, municipal elections, ending 25 years of governance of AKP and its Islamist predecessors. So he was a candidate for central-left CHP, but supported by also other opposition parties, including central-right E Party. And even if he's a member of CHP, he comes from the right side of the political spectrum with some nationalist background. That's also why actually there are some concerns about him among the opposition voters, or some opposition voters. However, in the last 3 years, I think he has managed to win the hearts and minds of many people in Turkey, not only in Ankara, because he's a popular mayor. Maybe he's not a popular politician, but he's a popular mayor. And he's been doing a good job by focusing on his duties as a mayor. And I think that was also his strategy. He's like behaving as a technocrat. He doesn't really deal with the political issues. He doesn't comment on other political issues, and he's focusing on his duties. And also surprisingly for some people, considering his nationalist background, I think he has also established good international relations as well, even a close cooperation with the European Union. He's cooperating with them to improve certain things in Ankara as well, but also he's reaching out to funding of the EU, of course. He even signed a cooperation agreement with the Brussels capital region. So it's like a twinning agreement between Ankara and Brussels. So no one was expecting him to be so pro-EU, pro-West when he was elected. So very briefly, his advantages and disadvantages may be, okay, he's from a central-left party, but as he's coming from the right side of the political spectrum with nationalist background, he may reach out to a part of the electorate which is not normally maybe possible for the opposition and for the other candidates. His image is also like a technocrat. As I said, he's very popular with what he's doing. And he seems to be also a team player. That's, I think, one of the key points, because the 6 parties are cooperating, and the 6 parties would like to also change the system from presidential system to parliamentary democracy. So while doing this, and considering the almost limitless power of the president position in Turkey, because he will still be elected, whoever he is or she is, as with the power of the president as Erdogan now. So that's why being a team player is important, because if Mansur Yavaş is elected, people believe that he may play that role better because he's more like a technocrat. He doesn't have this political ambitions, so that all this process towards the parliamentary system can be smoother. Also, another advantage, I think, he's also more acceptable candidate for the pro-government people as well, because they are afraid of a radical change or some revanchist even policies. And considering the other potential candidates, they may prefer actually Yavaş. But there are also disadvantages. I mean, one is, as he comes from a nationalist background, people have concerns whether the Kurdish voters would vote for him, especially since local elections. There is an ongoing dialogue between CHP and pro-Kurdish HDP, and HDP is making clear that they may support the opposition's joint candidate. However, it's not very clear whether they would also support a candidate with a nationalist background. And then the second point, yes, Yavaş is behaving like a technocrat, like doing his job as a mayor, avoiding political discussions. There's an advantage, but there's also a disadvantage because we don't know much about him. We don't know about his political positions because he doesn't talk about them. But the day one, if he becomes a candidate, he will need to talk about all those issues, about economy, about Kurdish issue, about international relations, about domestic affairs, so about other political parties, about Erdogan as well. So this is also a disadvantage. I don't know if you have something to add. You also probably met him in person too, right? To interview.
I did. Yeah, of course. I mean, he always emphasizes that actually he comes from a very, conservative nationalist background. And he once told me, like, actually how much they have changed, They were much more conservative when they were younger, much more, I don't know, close to the rest of the world, but he says like all this politics and this and that world is changing, so we are changing. He's that type. But he also told me, like, one-on-one, he said, honestly, even being a mayor of Ankara is like, that's too much. Now I'm aging. He told me he used to be mayor of Seferihisar, a small town close to Ankara. He said, all my youth, when I was a new father, I was the mayor of Seferihisar, basically. And he said, when you're
Not
mayor...
Seferihisar, by the way, that's Izmir mayor.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. What was that? Which
I was trying to find out too, but not
yeah,
Seferihisar.
but like small town, not Seferihisar. Yeah, exactly. But like some small town close to Ankara. So he said, when I was young, I was a mayor of this town, and I was like working all the time, and I missed when my kids were growing up. I missed that. I didn't realize even they were growing up. And now he says, I now have my grandchildren, and this time I don't want to miss them. I really want to, be a grandfather, spend time with them. What is it? Really, told this to me. But of course, I mean, being a president, who wouldn't want that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe in Turkey, yeah, that's a little risky in Turkey, but So this is what he told me.
Probably he wouldn't say no. I mean, if 6 parties come together and say that.
Yeah, but listen, but the thing about him is like he has this comfort now, as a mayor of Ankara, to not comment on daily politics. Like, for example, what does he think about the Kurdish issue? Like, we don't know. What does he think about Turkish foreign policy? We don't know. So he has this comfort not saying anything about politics in Turkey. He is just a mayor, a good mayor, hardworking. That's all we know. Otherwise, these are choppy waters. Once you're a presidential candidate, you're going to have to comment on, say, foreign policy, on, say, Kurdish issue, on, I don't know, economy. So, then things might change. That's another thing. Maybe Mansur Yavaş is aware of that. Maybe this is why he's distancing himself from all these discussions. But this also tells us something, maybe. All his popularity, although he doesn't say anything about politics, that maybe shows us something. Maybe people in Turkey are so fed up with all this, very political narrative, right now, we have this populist government, and like Turkey's a side in everything. Even if there's a conflict in Africa, Turkey is a side. Everything is so political, nothing is bipartisan in Turkey. So maybe this really shows us that Turkish people are really fed up with that. They maybe eventually they want a bipartisan administration. Maybe this is an indicator. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think İmamoğlu started in a similar way as well as another potential candidate, and he was really avoiding all these like confrontational issues, and he was trying to avoid tension. He was trying to reach out to also pro-government electorate as well. And similar to Yavaş, he also became extremely popular by winning the municipal elections in Istanbul in 2019. In a similar way, AKP and its predecessor Islamist parties were ruling the city since 1994. So actually, this victory made İmamoğlu even much more popular than Yavaş, because there are reasons. He won elections, but he won 2 times, because the first time it was cancelled without any legitimate reasons, and he won the rerun of election by even increasing his support. And secondly, he directly actually won against President Erdogan, or it was seen like this at least. Because Istanbul is very special for President Erdogan. His political career started as mayor of Istanbul, and he has always been saying that whoever wins in Istanbul wins Turkey, and İmamoğlu won. So that made him very popular. And unlike Yavaş, though, he has never kept a low profile. We are talking about a completely different personality. He's very active politically. He wants to be visible. He wants to talk about politics, and he doesn't shy away from sharing his positions. However, he is also making it clear that he has political ambitions beyond being mayor of Istanbul. This has positive and negative dimensions, I think, considering the current situation and cooperation between different parties. He has been doing good things in Istanbul, but somehow Yavaş, I think, has a better image as a mayor, as he is only focusing on his duties as mayor. And many people are actually criticizing İmamoğlu that his focus is not only Istanbul, but potentially next steps in his political career. He's also very active internationally. He has established, I think, very good ties with the EU, UK, United States. He's also more known, I think, internationally compared to Yavaş. And coming to his advantages and disadvantages very briefly, the advantage is he's starting with a point which is both an advantage and disadvantage, becoming, politically ambitious personality. It's clear that he wants to do more. It's clear that he wants to be a charismatic political leader doing things for Turkey and in Turkey's future. So 2 campaigns in Istanbul prove that he's also good at communicating with public. He was just a no-name candidate to start with, and then he became very popular. I think the AKP unwillingly helped him as well, but he also did a lot to communicate, and this is important. He's also popular among Kurdish voters. This is also probably a difference between İmamoğlu and Yavaş. And actually, many Kurds voted for him in 2019, especially in the rerun of elections. And he is in a position to attract potentially HDP voters, which could be very critical in the next elections. But there are also disadvantages, starting with, again, political ambitions, because these political ambitions also scare some people in the opposition. Some people believe that he would not be a low-profile president. He would use all powers of the current system, and this scares some people, and also the government probably. It's also not very clear whether he would be a team player to coordinate this transition process to parliamentary democracy with 6 political parties. And also, he may attract HDP voters, Kurdish voters, but would he also attract conservative, nationalist Turkish voters? That's also a question, whether you can attract both of them at the same time. Yes, HDP voters are important. We're talking about 9 to 12%. But nationalist Turkish voters are also very important. And there is also a disadvantage for both mayors, actually, because if they run for president, they will need to resign from their positions. And considering that the AKP and its partner MHP have majority in the municipal councils, both in Istanbul and Ankara, just a year before municipal elections, the next one will be in 2024, the opposition would be just giving in a gift box Ankara or Istanbul to AKP. And of course, they don't want to do this. And that's also one of the concerns about the candidates of these mayors, whether the opposition should give back one of these cities. It's a very difficult position, of course.
Then who else might, come in the picture? Obviously, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. He is the head of CHP, the main opposition party. So he's like this figure, basically. He's like a main character who holds this opposition together, because these 6 parties in this opposition, they're from different sides of the political sphere, really. And this is maybe everybody's talking about a candidate, because now these six political parties, one is CHP, they're like in center left, E party is on the center right, for example. There is Saadet Partisi, they're Islamist, very traditional, very conservative party. There's this Democrat party, they're kind of on the center, So, I mean, these 6 parties, it's actually impossible for them basically to sit at a table and say, come up with like a common economy policy, because, I mean, Democrat Party, for example, or E Party would be like less statist or something, On the other hand, CHP is like, in a sense, a classical social democratic party. So it's really hard for them to be able to work together. And that's why maybe we're always talking about a candidate, because, for example, these 6 political parties, they come together and they have these monthly meetings. They meet, all these leaders, talk for hours, but then they don't disclose much about what they have talked about, what they have agreed on, because I think they're walking on a really thin line. It's this coalition seems so fragile. It's like because there are many differences, so they're walking on a really thin line. So they don't disclose much. Actually, there is no transparency in that sense. It's like they're just telling their voters, okay, hold on, we're working on something, we're going to make this work, but just you got to be patient and you got to trust us. And so this is why Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu comes into the picture. He's an Alevi. Turkey is a majority Sunni country, although Turkey is secular. There are a lot of conservative voters who think religion is very important. And Alevi is like it's more closer to Shia branch of Islam. It's more, I'd call it like Anatolian Islam in a sense. So anyways, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu is an Alevi from the minority. For secular people, it really doesn't matter who is what. And he's not a religious Alevi. He's not practicing or anything, He's a very secular person, but still, as a label. So for some conservative voters, that's important. So this is why people think, if Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu decides to run as the opposition's candidate, Mr. Erdogan is kind of going to use that. He's going to always emphasize that Kılıçdaroğlu is Alevi and this and that. So he's going to he's going to scare off conservative voters. But on the other hand, he's such a, let's say, peaceful figure. When he first came into the politics, he was likened to Mr. Gandhi, from India. So he's calm, collected, listening to everyone, finding common grounds with everyone, type of politician. They're always saying, it's Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu who is holding the opposition together despite all the differences, because he's balancing everyone and stuff. So, some are saying Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu should run as a candidate of the opposition. I don't know. We're going to see that. There is also obviously one more figure from the opposition. She is the head of E Party, which is the center-right party. She's a woman, a strong figure. She was with the MHP, the main nationalist party. They tried to topple Devlet Bahçeli, who's the head of Nationalist Party, who is in coalition with AK Party, Mr. Erdogan. They tried to topple Devlet Bahçeli, but she was stopped. So she formed her own party with her comrades, in a sense. So, despite starting politics as a nationalist party, now E Party is trying to come to the center and some sort of represent a center-right party in Turkish politics. We're also following that. In the beginning, people were wondering if Meral Akşener would want to run as a presidential candidate. She basically said, I'm not running, I'm not going to run, I will be the prime minister. So what does she mean by that? So
there's no position as prime minister at the moment, though.
Yeah, there is no prime minister position because Turkey has switched to this Turkish style presidential system. What the opposition is saying, once they're elected, there's going to be a transitional period in Turkey. So we will, when there's an election, we will go and vote for a president. But if the opposition's candidate is elected, there is going to be a transitional period, and like in say 2-3 years, Turkey is going to transition into a parliamentary system. And in that case, Ms. Akşener is going to be the prime minister of Turkey, regardless of whoever the president. So she positioned herself as the prime minister. So, this is the situation. It looks a little bit complicated, but if you like, we can just like which one is likely to run. Maybe we can go through some polls. Maybe. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, let's start off with this.
I mean, there are other names too, or people try to profile like people like technocrats, businessmen, like world-known scientists and all. But
Yes,
I
but
think
these are
the
the
opposition has already learned this lesson, like it should be a political figure.
Exactly. They need a political figure because the election will be in the presidential system. The person who's going to run is going to run against Mr. Erdogan. It's not easy. It's a political animal. So, let's start off with this Aksoy polling, maybe. Aksoy polling, I mean, we have to actually emphasize that they are basically Aksoy, they're working with CHP actually. But this is like a serious polling firm, we can say that. I know the owner, Ertan Aksoy. He's been in this business for a long time because this polling business, it's a business in Turkey, to be honest. You gotta, when you're watching the polls in Turkey, you gotta know who did the poll, why did they the poll, who are they close to. Basically, they can be really manipulating.
And the owners are very well known. I mean, like
Owners,
in the Western European countries, people don't even know the owners of polling companies. But in Turkey, they are almost every day on TV commenting on matters from, I don't know, from French elections to rising prices to local politics to Russia to anything. So
anything,
that's also a bit strange, like just like
yeah.
many other things in Turkey.
Yeah, because the head of these polling agencies, they also work as like usually spin doctors or like communication strategists for leaders and this and that. So it's
but not very clearly though. I mean, we don't even know. There's no transparency, like which company is working for which leader. That's not transparent. We don't know.
The rumors, this. If you want to basically define Turkey's system, a system of rumors, basically. It's all about rumors, So, but the Ertan Aksoy, they are kind of transparent. We know who they are. And they're trying to do a good job. So this is the polling that they did. They did like every scenario, whichever candidate runs against Mr. Erdogan, what happens? As we see, Mansur Yavaş gets most of the votes. Ekrem İmamoğlu, a little below him. Even Meral Akşener gets more votes than Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu in this scenario. And there are other names. You can see Muharrem İnce, Ali Babacan, and Selahattin Demirtaş. Selahattin Demirtaş is the Kurdish politician who's still currently in jail.
Yeah, I mean, this makes it actually quite clear. If it was just like an ordinary political scenario, seeing this, you would say, yes, it's Mansur Yavaş or Ekrem İmamoğlu. But because of all the reasons and advantages and disadvantages we talked about, this is not very clear. Maybe it will be none of them, and potentially maybe even a totally different name we don't even see here in the list. So, but I think for many people, the picture is clear. I mean, those two mayors, they seem to have a better chance. And at the end of the day, probably they will need to be one of the potential candidates, at least, to be discussed by 6 political parties and to be decided. And also, as 6 parties will decide, I don't know whether they would really want to have Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu the chairman of one of the political parties, because he has a political position, while the mayors don't have political positions in a political party. And also, I'm sure Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu wants to be the president, because he has been also creating all these strategies in terms of cooperation among opposition parties, creating this alliance. And it has been quite successful too. I mean, also in 2019 municipal elections. Now it's also enlarging, going beyond just 2 parties, covering 6 parties. But I think he also understands. I mean, what we see here, I'm sure he sees also different political opinion polls as well. So
Like, yeah, let's switch to
I believe
another.
that he's a reasonable person. So that's my only hope.
Let's switch to another opinion poll, if you like. This is Avrasya anket, Avrasya araştırma. However, like, you got to be a little bit cautious about Avrasya araştırma because they're really close to the opposition, and they're sometimes too optimistic on the opposition side, I would say. But there's a scenario if Ekrem İmamoğlu runs against Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he wins by a bigger margin, as you say. This is if Ekrem İmamoğlu runs.
To clarify, because it's in Turkish, also the yellow part is actually people who would be supporting the opposition candidate.
True. And if Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu runs against Erdogan, well, Avrasya Araştırma thinks he's still going to win, but a very small margin, 1%. By the way, I mean, in polling, like, how do you, I mean, as far as I know, I kind of studied a little bit of statistics back in the university, but like, it's really, you cannot, like 1%, 2%, you really cannot, as far as I know, how are you going to,
But I mean, we also see now the French elections, the second round. There are like 10 different opinion polls since last Sunday, and some of them are showing just 2-3% difference between Le Pen and Macron. Others are showing 10% difference. So maybe it's not only specific issue for Turkey either.
No, you're totally, I understand. But the thing is, in statistics, basically, it's very hard to, you cannot say 1%. What is 1%? There is also this, minus plus 1-2% margin of error anyway. So it's like, I came up to, we did a poll. It's like, what is that? 39.9. That's not how you do polling. I mean, right? But I mean, Avrasya anket, this is why we're showing this, because basically most of the opposition voters, they like the character Kemal Özkiraz, they follow him and this and that, but like, it's really hard to, like, I mean, so yeah, you could be cautious. And
but
also,
in a way, it's also good to show this, because even according to them, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, there's no clear victory for him. Like,
and the scenario with Mansur Yavaş is like he gets 43%, and Recep Tayyip Erdogan
12.5, it makes 55.5 actually.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So this is more or less what we're seeing in the polls and what the people on the street are discussing. But one thing, though, it's being really criticized. So people are criticizing, all these 6 parties, 6 leaders, they come together and they discuss. We don't know, behind closed doors. After each meeting, they release a statement, but the statement is like 2 paragraphs. We don't know much. So, and people are saying, you're promising us democracy. So what sort of democracy is that? If you are, because they are telling the voters, like, okay, wait for us, just trust in us, be patient, whatever, we're going to come up with the best formula and the best candidate. And people are saying, like, you're promising us democracy, but what sort of democracy is that? Why aren't we somehow included in that process of, deciding the opposition's candidate? Like, be it NGOs, be it academia, whomever, opinion leaders, because it looks like they're going to just decide who's going to be the candidate before, behind closed doors, and people are kind of reacting to that.
But I also wonder whether we really overestimate the role of these 6 parties coming together. Okay, they don't really like to be called like this, but actually we talk about 2 parties. They are, I think, cooperating pretty well already for quite a few years. One central left, one central right, E Party and CHP. And all others are small parties. And it's good that they are there, and because a few percent may really change everything. But I'm not sure if they should really play such a huge role in the future of Turkey either. I mean, a party, I don't know, like Democrat Party, I don't even know if they will get 0.1%. Okay, they are there. It's good that there's plurality and all. But on the other hand, probably at the end of the day, obviously the big parties will dictate certain things and will be more influential in forming those policies, from foreign policy to economy and all others. So that's why I think it matters that they come together to have one candidate. But beyond that, for all other policies, maybe we shouldn't expect so much from them.
Well, yeah, we'll see. So do you want to add up something?
I think that's it for today. And we really very briefly
Yeah.
presented all potential candidates. I hope it's clear for the viewers, because as everything else in Turkey, it's a complex matter.
Exactly. Chaotic
But I
Turkey.
think it's very clear that mayors are still the top candidates.
Exactly. We'll see. We'll be following up on that.
Biden.
Okay.